Every decade holds certain memories that make it unique, and the 1970s is no exception. The styles and trends from that time are still instantly recognizable, even to younger generations. But beyond the unmistakable disco craze and bell-bottom jeans, there are other smaller, memorable details from the 70s that those who lived through it will easily recall. Let's take a look at 13 things from the 1970s that kids today would probably struggle to understand. Watching TV in the 1970s was a completely different experience than it is today. For starters, there were only 3 main channels, plus public broadcasting. That's right, just 3. No streaming platforms or endless choices. And if you wanted to change the channel, you had to get up and physically turn the dial on the TV. People eagerly awaited their favorite shows, especially the popular nighttime series and Saturday morning cartoons. One big difference between programming back then compared to today is that most TV shows were suitable for family viewing. Whole families could watch most primetime shows together without mom and dad worrying about violent or salacious content. Very few of today's scripted TV shows could have gotten on the air in the 70s. There were some quality dramas such as The Waltons, Hawaii 5-0, and The $6 Million Man, my personal favorite. With so few channels available, it's no surprise that kids spend so much time outdoors. Well, that, and many parents simply sent them outside to play. Creating a mixtape was an art form that required a lot of time and dedication. You'd sit by the radio for hours, waiting for just the right song to play. And even if you had great timing, hitting the play and record buttons just right often resulted in the DJ talking over the song's intro. But that was part of the charm. Cassette tapes had their own quirks too. If the tape got tangled, you'd have to wind it back with a pencil. But cassettes were the first step toward what we know today as playlists, and they gave people the freedom to listen wherever they wanted. If you were a kid in the 1970s, chances are you ran around pretending to be Superman or Batman, and your costume might have included a pair of superhero underoos. Underoos was a popular brand of children's underwear featuring characters from popular franchises like Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, and Star Wars. They became especially popular among young children and were often given as gifts or used as a reward for good behavior, and helped encourage a lot of kids to get out of diapers. These weren't just underwear, they doubled as a makeshift superhero outfit when you were playing around the house. Today's kids probably don't appreciate their underwear in quite the same way. In the 70s, record stores weren't just places to buy music, they were social hubs. Similar to how malls were in the 1980s, young people would gather at record stores to browse through albums, hang out with friends, and even listen to records before buying them. The store staff were often music enthusiasts who would recommend great finds, and it wasn't unusual to strike up conversations with fellow music lovers. The local record store had a unique vibe that's hard to replicate today. Hitchhiking was a pretty common practice in the 1970s. It wasn't unusual to see someone sticking out a thumb on the side of the road, and drivers would often pick up hitchhikers without much hesitation. There was a sense of camaraderie on the road back then, although it wasn't without its risks. Occasionally you'd encounter a strange character or two, but that was part of the adventure. Nowadays, hitchhiking is illegal in many places, but back then, you might find a student, a soldier, or even a free-spirited hippie catching a ride. Men in the 1970s had a distinct look. They sported thick mustaches. Sideburns were a critical element of men's hairstyles, growing in length and width, often accompanied by the unmistakable scent of aftershave. The macho style was in full swing, and bold fashion choices were everywhere. Leaving a couple of buttons undone on your shirt to show off some chest hair was just part of the swagger that defined men's style in that era. Women had their own unique beauty trends as well. Products like Sun-In were popular for achieving that sun-kissed blonde look, and many women spent time outdoors after applying it, hoping for the perfect highlights. And then there was Love's Baby Soft, a sweet youthful fragrance that was iconic in the 1970s. Almost every girl wore it, but today's advertising standards might not approve of the same marketing campaigns. When the kitchen phone rang, you had no idea who was calling. This was before caller ID, so you answered every call blindly, unsure if it was a friend or a telemarketer. Sometimes you'd end up tangled in the long cord while chatting, or you'd be shouting across the house to let someone know the call was for them. It's hard to imagine today's kids picking up the phone without knowing who's on the other end. The 1970s brought us the joy of instant photography with the Polaroid camera. There was something magical about snapping a picture and watching it develop right in front of you. But with limited film, every photo had to be carefully considered. There was also the ritual of shaking the photo to make it develop faster, a myth that many people still believed. When you couldn't bring your Polaroid along, photo booths at places like arcades and roller rinks were the perfect spot for taking goofy pictures with friends. Step into a 1970s kitchen and you'll be greeted by a burst of color that defines the era. Colors were found in wall paint, and you'd likely see a lot of mushroom-themed decor, plates, curtains, even wallpaper. The best 70s kitchens had a little bit of each of these colors as a complementary palette of retro colors. The earthy, nature-inspired style was all the rage, and mushrooms seemed to be the unofficial mascot of that trend. It might seem quirky now, but it was a defining aesthetic of the era. Saturday mornings weren't complete without sugary cereal. But in the 1970s, it wasn't just the taste that drew kids in. It was the toy hidden inside the box. Kids would beg their parents for certain cereals just to get the prize, and digging through the box to find it felt like uncovering buried treasure. It made breakfast a bit more exciting than it is today. Opening a soda or beer can was a different experience in the 70s. You pulled back a ring to remove the tab, and those sharp metal tabs were often discarded on the ground, creating a hazard, especially in places like beaches. These pull tabs were eventually replaced with the safer stay tabs we use today, but they were just another small reminder of life in the 1970s. Finally, school lunches in the 1970s often came packed in metal lunchboxes complete with matching thermos. The most common modern form is a small case with a clasp and handle, often printed with a colorful image that can either be generic or based on children's television shows or films. They'd often get a bit rusty, but nobody seemed to mind. Opening a metal lunchbox after a long, hot day was a nostalgic experience that today's kids, with their insulated bags and ice packs, will never fully appreciate. Let us know in the comments if I missed anything. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel for the latest updates using the link in the description. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to check out the other videos in this series. While you're here, hit the subscribe button and share this channel with anyone who'd enjoy a nostalgic journey. Thank you for watching.